שלום.
שלום.
אני בחרדות אם הבמה הזאת תחזיק אותי או לא, אבל נקווה לטוב. פרופסור, לפני שנתחיל אני אגיד כמה מילים, ברשותך. קודם כל, אני מאוד גאה להיות באירוע שהכותרת שלו היא הקשבה ויצירה וביחד בתקופה כל כך מורכבת, מסובכת ולא פשוטה. אז ממש תודה על האירוע הזה, הוא הגיע בדיוק בזמן. הבמה קצת רועדת מתחתיי, טוב, נקווה שזה לא ייגמר בהתרסקות. הוספנו מימד של דרמה לאירוע, האם הם יישארו בחיים בסופו. אני אומר כמה מילים עליך, פרופסור. אוטו שארמר הוא פרופסור לכלכלה וניהול באוניברסיטת MIT בבוסטון. חוקר ומרצה מבוקש בתחום המנהיגות האישית והארגונית, מפתח תיאוריית U, שעוסקת בשינוי מערכתי מבוסס מודעות, יועץ לאום, זוכה של פרסים בינלאומיים, ביניהם פרס עבור קידום תודעת האנושות מהרשת הבינלאומית לפיתוח ארגוני. עד היום למעלה מ-200,000 איש מ-185 מדינות השתתפו בקורס המקוון שלו בתיאוריית U, וגם אני הגעתי לנושא דרך השתתפות בסדנה שהעבירה דניאל במכון מנדל. שלום פרופסור שארמר, שמחים על ההזדמנות לשוחח איתך. השיטה שפיתחת בעקבות המחקר שלך היא עוסקת בשינוי מערכתי מוסדי, דבר שאפשר לשייך אותו לעולמות של חומר, אבל חלק גדול מהעבודה היא מאוד פנימית. עבודה של מודעות והקשבה, יש משהו מאוד זן בשיטה. מה היית אומר שאתה יותר, רוחני או חומרי?
So the question is, what's the approach? Oh. I think it is a kind of spirituality that is grounded in our material experience. So it's a spirituality that is moving beyond that dichotomy of one versus the other. And that's really, so essentially, what does that mean, right? An attention-based view, as Danielle was saying. So attention-based view means that the way we pay attention, the way we listen, the way we enact conversations is actually shaping the world they are dealing with. And that we as humans have agency. There's more than one way of doing it. And that agency is our superpower.
אני רוצה לשאול אותך על הקשבה. כשהייתי בסדנה של דניאל, נדהמתי, הרגשתי כאילו הכרתי אותך כבר שנים מבלי שהכרתי אותך. אני מראיין כבר הרבה שנים ועיתונאי הרבה שנים. אני מראיין או אנשים מאוד מאוד מוכרים, שצריך לסדוק קצת את הפסדה שלהם, אבל בתוכנית השנייה שאני עושה, אני מסתובב במקומות מאוד טיפוליים. למשל, מקום שמטפלים בהפרעות אכילה. היום עולה בתאגיד סדרה שלמה שעשינו על אלימות נגד נשים. אני חושב ששם, במקומות האלה, בשטח, בחצר האחורית של החברה שלנו, שמה אני הבנתי עד כמה הקשבה היא כלי, ולפעמים התפקיד שלי הוא להיות ב-500% הקשבה, כלומר, לשתוק כמעט לגמרי, לעבוד רק עם מה שמי שמולי מביא איתו. אתה יכול לספר לי מהניסיון שלך על רגע בחיים שהבנת את הכוח הגדול של הקשבה?
Yeah, well, I think Yuri started describing that. So I just realized by stumbling into it that listening is not listening. Kind of there's a way of, and we all know that. So let's say if I have a problem, I don't know exactly what to do, I know exactly what person to talk with, right? So it's not a person that's interrupting me and telling me what to do before I actually share what the situation is. But they are like among our friends. Sometimes we call them coaches, sometimes we call them friends. If we have someone who actually can deeply listen, if I then speak about what's kind of ruminating in my mind, the situation I'm facing, then I begin to see more of the whole situation than I would have if I just had spoken to myself. So I think we all know from our personal experience that listening makes a big difference. And I just stumbled into that by realizing if that when looking at what are the different types of listening and which level of listening feels and what's coming out of that, what I realized is that what matters is not only what we listen to, but also from which inner place we are listening to. So am I listening from what I already know, right? Reconfirming certain patterns that I expected to see. Am I listening from, and I think on the side of the listener, we can make an intentional choice to drop our listening towards suspending some of these assumptions and, you know, just tuning into what's actually new. I know maybe 90% of what was shared, but what's kind of the one thing that's really interesting that I didn't expect? So we can attune our listening into that. And then we can drop even deeper into, so for example, at MIT, the first class, right, when students come in, the exercise on during the first week is empathy walk, right? Find a stranger in your own city, a person that's maximum different to you, has nothing to do with your world, and spend a couple of hours as an appreciative guest in that person's life. And you will not believe how profound the learning experiences are that people come back to. And what they often say is that before you get to the deeper place to listen to someone who is very different and maybe also is holding very different political views than you do, you need to open your heart, right? First, so that's kind of what first I needed to open my heart in order then for that other person, in order then to drop into this deeper level of listening. And how do I know whether or not I am there? Well, I just forget about my own agenda. I forget about my own next question. And I just kind of take a deep dive into what it looks like and feels like. And when we are lucky, so that's kind of the third level of listening. And when we are lucky, right, sometimes we are, sometimes we are not, we drop into yet a deeper level of listening where something new begins to come into the conversation that wasn't there before. Something new is being born. Something new is kind of becoming present in a conversation. And often the gateway into that is a moment of stillness. And that's, I don't know how that relates to your experience.
אני מרגיש שאתה אחי העובד במובן מסוים. רק לקח לי שנים להבין את זה. אני אתאר לך מהמקום שלי את זה כך. יש קונפליקט, שאגב אני בטוח שרבים הזדהו איתו, כי כולנו מוצאים את עצמנו בשיחות עם אנשים, הרבה פעמים אנשים שאנחנו לא מכירים, שאנחנו צריכים מהם משהו. ויש קונפליקט גדול בעבודה שלי כמראיין, בין ההכנה הכפייתית מראש, אני לומד אותם, אני מנסח את האג'נדות, אני יודע בדיוק לאן אני רוצה להגיע, לבין ההקשבה בזמן אמת. שנים הייתי בכרטיסיות, כן? כמו שאמרת, in my next question. 4 שנים האחרונות הבנתי שהרבה יותר חשוב זה ההקשבה בזמן אמת. זאת אומרת, זה להיות עם המרואיין, ולהיות גם מוכן לזה שהרבה פעמים הקונספציה שלי לגבי האחר מוטעת לחלוטין, היא תקרוס במהלך הצילומים, לא לפחד מהרגע הזה, כי זה יהיה הרגע הכי משמעותי בפגישה, ורק אם התכוננתי מספיק טוב, אני אוכל להיות מספיק גמיש כדי ללכת לכיוון שבו נמצאת האמת. אבל כל הדברים שאתה מדבר עליהם ואני, הם מאוד מפחידים. זאת אומרת, קשה להיכנס למצב של הקשבה נקייה, עמוקה, ב-level יותר גבוה. מפחיד שהקונספציה הראשונית שלך קורסת. בכלל, ללכת עם מה שהאחר מביא איתו זה אף פעם לא פשוט. מעניין אותי, ולא תכננת את השאלה הזאת מראש, איך שוברים את הפחד הזה בעצמך, את הקירות הפנימיים, כדי לקפוץ בנג'י לנפשו של האחר, במין דימוי שכזה?
I think what I find myself doing is that, now, we all do that naturally with our friends, so we already know how to do it. It's just in certain other situations a lot more difficult, like, for example, a professional situation or even a conflict situation. And so what I find myself doing is that I consciously decide to go to tune. So when someone is talking, there's a lot of resonances that come up, but I have a choice what I attend to and what I let go. So kind of all my judgments, everything kind of, so okay, you are there, so just step to the side because I'm tuning into the one thing that I find interesting. So I think sometimes, eventually, what you want to get to is that you get to a place within yourself where you truly love the other person. And what does that mean?
Wow.
It means that, so it means that you begin to see the other person not in terms of who he or she is as a result of the past, but in terms of what is actually dormant, right? What is kind of the highest future possibility? We all come here through some kind of story. We are born someplace, but you know, that's just the story that's behind us. There's another part of the story that's yet dormant, that can be, don't have to be, but could be activated. So opening, you know, attending to that part with interest. I think interest is not something that happens to you. It's something you can switch on or not switch on. And I find that a useful gateway to activate what you really want to activate, which is your love for that other person, to truly attend to the highest future potential and put yourself into the service of helping to manifest that. That is a lot more, so it's not something that happens to us, but it's something where we can do certain things that makes it a lot more likely to be embodied in the conversation.
אני רוצה לשאול אותך קצת על הסיפור שלך. אתה שוזר בספר שלך על יסודות תיאוריית איוס, סיפורים אישיים מחייך. אם אתה צריך לבחור זיכרון אחד מילדותך ששופך אור על הבחירות שלך, על המסלול המקצועי שלך, על התיאוריה, איזה זיכרון זה יהיה? זיכרון מהילדות.
Well, there are so many. So, I mean, now, so maybe I can just touch on two very different ones. So one was when I grew up on a farm north of Hamburg in northern Germany, and it was a 300+ year-old farmhouse and so on, and we would go by train to the school, to the city, to Hamburg. And one day, and I must have been 16 or something like that, the first strange thing that happens is that in the last lesson, the teacher, the principal comes in and calls me out and tells me to go home, and she doesn't explain to me why, and it's a little strange because her eyes were slightly red, as if she had cried just prior to talking to me. So I didn't know what to make of it, so I went to the train station, called home. There was no ring that I remember, kind of no one was picking up anything, so that was a little strange too. I took the train, no one at the final destination, another 8 kilometers to go, no one was there to pick me up, no bus, so the first time in my life I took a taxi, and half home I suddenly see it, the entire sky is black, and the smoke was arising from the place where the farm used to be. And then I remember kind of running, you know, the last 800 meters, so the driveway, I'm running past all these people and coming to stop right in front of the fireplace and realizing that the whole world I had been living in up to that point was up in flames, was no longer there, was all that was left was just a burning heap of rubble. And as that image slowly started to penetrate my mind, it felt like someone is pulling away the ground from under your feet, and at first it feels like you drop into nowhere because everything, I realized how much my whole identity up to that point was wrapped into the world no longer existing. I didn't realize that before. But I also realized that not everything was gone. There was still someone watching all that, taking in that image, someone who was seeing all that. And I had a very profound experience there that I have had never before, which is a slowing down of time and feeling pulled upwards from your body, slightly upwards, so you still see this thing, but from slightly upwards, your body, and it felt like I felt pulled into a direction which was not connected with my identity of the past. That was no longer there, but that was connected to a possibility of the future that maybe my forward journey could help to manifest. So that was a very profound experience that I, for many years, didn't talk to anyone about. But the next day, my grandfather, who was in his last week of his life, who just turned 87, he came to his last visit. So someone drove him by. He exited the car. And as you know, when these big fires, it takes some days to kill them. So it was still burning there. But he wasn't even looking at that. He was looking at my father, went straight, who was doing some of the cleanup work, went up to him, took his hand, and said, "Head up, my boy, look forward. Kopf hoch, mein Junge, Blick nach vorn." And they exchanged a few more things, and then he turned around and left. And in hindsight, this experience, so you're at the last week of your life, a lot of what you have been working for all your life just went up in flames, but you make the decision to not turn your attention to the loss, but to what's possible at the horizon of the future now, made a big impact on me. And only many years later, after I went to MIT and started to work from learning and leading from the past versus learning and leading from the emerging future, I realized that actually, I didn't realize Catherine was making me aware of that in that story, I already had received the gift of going through that whole process, of letting go, because there was nothing left. And then from that letting go, something new began to emerge that ever since has been guiding me.
וואו. תודה שחלקת איתנו את הרגע הזה. אני נזכרתי, כשסיפרת עליו בציטוט של דוד גרוסמן, שטלטל אותי כשקראתי אותו כשהייתי חייל, הוא כותב, באורכי זורם הזמן, לא דם, זמן. הסופר דוד גרוסמן. כשאתה מתבגר, התיאוריה שלך עוסקת מאוד בקשר בין האדם היחיד והמערכת והשינוי המערכתי. והיו לך רגעים לא פשוטים, כמו לכולנו, בהתמודדות עם המערכת. אתה יכול לתאר לנו איזה סיפור, רגע, אנקדוטה שהיא ממש נקודת ציון בתובנות שלך על הקשר שבין האדם למערכת?
So, I have a friend at MIT that maybe some of you may be familiar with, and friend and colleague, Peter Senge. So he's the author of The Fifth Discipline, so a lot of the organizational learning practices that, you know, in many companies after total quality management became mainstream, has been, you know, not originating all of that, but, you know, bringing that topic into the boardroom of management worldwide. And and he was actually the reason why I went to MIT, because I wanted to learn from that ecosystem that he had been creating with colleagues. So what he likes to say is, what's most systemic is most personal. And what's most personal can be, so that's what I would add, right? So what's most systemic is most personal, and I would add, what's most personal can be very systemic. In other words, we deal with systems change challenges today that cannot be solved by, you know, I tell you what's broken with you and what you need to do different kind of interaction. But it does need, we all have challenges where we need transformative change. But often we don't know what it takes to transform a situation that's stuck. And the one thing that I have learned over the years is, if you cannot embody the future that you want to create in your personal interaction, it's very hard. The toughest problems are not solvable that way. So that's why both when you surface what's actually going on in the system, there's not only third-person data, there's not only analytics and research that you need to do, you also need to connect to our deeper capacities to sense, to feel what is not just apparent, but what's kind of more in the deeper underground of relationships. So basically what Theory U does is that I am talking about different types of systems based on different qualities of relationships. And what I'm basically saying is, if we want to change the system, the outcomes that we create, we need to shift the way we connect with each other. And if we want to shift that, we need to shift our awareness, the inner place from that we operate. So that's in a nutshell. And therefore, if you want to change a system, the stuff out there, it needs to start here. And that's why the systemic and the personal are highly intertwined particularly in the most difficult and most interesting challenges that we face. Do you agree?
לגמרי, אני מאוד מסכים, אני שואל את עצמי איך עושים את זה, במיוחד במציאות הנוכחית במדינתנו הקטנטונת. אני אנסה להסביר לך, היו לי 40 שאלות, אנחנו נספיק 8, אבל זה בסדר, זה מרתק, וכל העניין הוא מה שקורה כאן ועכשיו. אני רוצה טיפה לתאר לך את המכשול הגדול שאנחנו חווים פה בישראל. מאוד יומרני מצידי, אבל אני אנסה. אני חושב שהמכשול, הבעיה הגדולה שאנחנו חווים, היא הקיטוב העמוק בחברה. והפער הגדול בין מה שקורה כאן בחדר, באולם, ושקורה לכל אחד בחיים שלו, שזה הרבה רצון טוב והרבה כוונות טובות והמון פוטנציאל, לבין איך שאנחנו מונהגים, כן? איך הכוחות הפוליטיים הגדולים מנתבים אותנו, שהרבה פעמים התחושה שהם מנתבים אותנו לקיטוב ולשיסוי. כן? בישראל כרגע הקולות השולטים הם קולות שמנגישים אותנו זה בזה ומעמידים אותנו מיד משני צידי מתרס. אתה יודע, אני חווה את זה כל הזמן. אני מגיש תוכנית ברדיו, כל מרואיין שני מנסה להגיד לי, רגע, אתה שמאלני, רגע, אתה האויב שלי, אתה מיד תוויות, מיד לשים אותי מול האחר, וזה נורא חבל, כי בסופו של דבר המדינה הזאת מושתתת על אחוות אחים, על מכנה משותף מאוד מאוד גדול, ככה היא הוקמה, של הבעיה היהודית. איך אנחנו, וואו, זה היה ממש שיעור בהיסטוריה, אני צריך לרשום את זה איפשהו. אני מקווה אבל אנחנו באמת, אתה מגיע לכאן בשיאו כמעט של הכיתוב. מה אנחנו כפרטים יכולים לעשות עם זה?
So, you're asking someone who comes here with a German background. I'm not sure I'm the right person. I'm not sure I'm the right person to giving great suggestions here. But you also ask, you're also asking an American who actually has a lot of empathy with that situation because, as you all know, we have been and we still are going through exactly the same situation. And like many of us, I have also seen other places, and it is yes, it may be a little more extreme here in the US, but it's a universal condition we are moving towards. So it's not specific to one or two places on Earth. And I think if I just comment on maybe the situations we face in the US, which may be a little bit more appropriate for me, maybe two things. One is, we all know this polarization has a lot to do with the way we have conversations, right? And a lot of that is structured through social media. And that's basically in the 4 levels that I differentiated, kind of listening, of conversation, and so on. That's all level 1. That's the problem, basically. It's this structure. And it gives the loudest megaphone to the most crazy people, basically, the most extreme views. And it crowds out everyone else who has a more differentiated, sophisticated view of reality. So that's what social media does, the algorithms, as we all know. I don't know how big a factor that is here. It's a huge factor in the US. Because if you poll people on major key issues in life, you find out these apparently kind of two polarized communities can't do anything with each other. They have many shared views on many of the most fundamental issues. So there is really a mismatch between the human direct reality and what is the way it's amplified in how we organize conversation in our society now. So that's my first observation. The other one is where, yes, it is toxic, and yes, it's very difficult. And what I have seen in some of the, here in the last few days, but what I've seen in the years before in the US as well, is that we need new constellations, new conversations, and often it's not about, what we need to learn is not how to organize around same ideology, right, and then othering everyone else, but we need to learn how to connect with others in our place-based communities, with others that come from very different backgrounds, hold very different views, and so on, and yet there can be ways how we can work together. So on a local level, there is a lot more progress than often is credited, then often shows up in the more public conversation. That's how we have it in the US. So on the municipal level, kind of on the sub-municipal level, in many kind of smaller communities, there is something new growing from underneath that, yes, on a national level in the US, it's still pretty challenging, but even there, I think the leverage point is to create different type of holding spaces where those who realize that the current direction of travel is no one leading anywhere. And that in order to really move into a different direction, we need not only new ways of listening, but also new holding spaces. And the way you start that is small, because that's where you grow these capacities, kind of these, and the way I think about that really is a social field. So when we have a conversation, when we convene a group, and we are together for a few days, what is it actually that's being activated? It's a social field. It's kind of the connections and the qualities of connections we have with each other. To create different, so more generative, so to move the social fields from toxic to generative starts small. It doesn't start big. But then if it happens in many places, it can move up and it can, also scale up. And that's what I see in many places, a beginning of, and also kind of a continuation on a larger level of scale. So that's the only thing that I can say with confidence, because I have seen it.
אני רוצה לשאול אותך שאלה אחרונה. דיברת קצת על מה שקורה ויקרה כאן היום בכנס הזה בין כולנו. ואני שואל את עצמי על הרגע שנצא מפה, שכל אחד יצא מפה, וקצת על הנושא של שיחה בין יחיד מול קהל. כל אחד מפה ירצה לתווך מסר, מחשבה, רעיון לילדים שלו, לתלמידים שלו, לאנשים שהוא עובד איתם. אני נתקל בזה, אתה יודע, אני חושב על זה שבקרוב אני הולך להופיע בכיתה של הבת שלי, כן, מול הכיתה. אני הולך בקרוב פעם ראשונה להרצות באולם, להרצות בצוותא. אני שובר את הקיר הרביעי של הטלוויזיה. כשאנחנו עומדים מול קהל, איזה סוג של דיאלוג אנחנו יכולים לקיים? איזה סוג של הקשבה קיימת? אפילו במה שאנחנו עושים כאן ועכשיו. למה אנחנו צריכים לשים לב? מתוך רצון כללי לעשות טוב.
Such a great question. So I would like us to pay attention what's already in the room. And so I was, as I was sitting here and talking to a few of you, kind of just before it started, we had a little chat, and I was thinking, I was just struck by the positive, the power of the dormant and not so dormant positive energy that's in the room between you and between all of us. And I don't know how that makes me feel. I mean, also, all the meetings we had the last few days, it feels like I'm already a month here. It was only like 2-3 days or something. It's, there is something here, kind of, I can reflect on that, and then there is something deeper going on. And the deeper on the feeling level, I would almost, it would be presumptuous, and I'm not saying it, so it would be presumptuous to say it feels like home, but what it does for sure, and what I can say, it feels very deeply connected. It's very striking. And that's what you all bring into the situation. That's what you, Danielle, Ayel, everyone else kind of co-created with each other. You cultivated that over, and everyone else in their own circles, right? So we all come from circles that already maybe on a deeper level are connected, right? But we haven't still uncovered that. So I would say the first thing to do is to really pay attention what's already there. Most things are already there that we want, but we are not attending to them in the right way. So when we speak to a group, to a situation, I think taking that moment of stillness, and rather than just moving into the message and yes, these are my 3 points and so on and so forth, kind of that little moment of nothingness, of just kind of connecting with, attending to what's already there, and allow what you say be influenced and shaped by what you feel already present in the room. And I'm sure that's what you do in your interviews, right? So that's kind of that's how we move from executing kind of all the good things I had in mind I want to do towards opening up what's actually already there and what's beginning to emerge, right? What is maybe also, what are new patterns that haven't been manifesting yet that are already dominant in the situation. So for me, so how to do that? Taking the moment before, right? Before you move into a stand and deliver situation, so in any kind of interaction with any kind of group, the most important time is the time before. The time where you attune yourself, the time where you move into not going through your key points, but just kind of sensing into who is actually there, what's actually present, what is actually maybe present on a deeper level as a potential. I think that's something very practical we all can do. And the other one is, if I work with any kind of groups, if I do, one of the best tips I ever got, right, is to set your intention. So before you move into a situation, to set your intention to really be in service of whatever the community is, whatever the person is, whatever the joint initiative is, someone that's calling you in. So it is something that you can set as your own intention to really be an instrument for serving that to progress. And I personally believe the way we set our intention is shaping the world. It's an important factor of the reality that we enact. So those would be two things.
אוקיי, אני אקח איתי מאוד את ה-moment before. זה הזכיר לי שיר שאני מאוד אוהב, שכתב חנוך לוין, שהוא אולי אחד המשוררים המחזאיים הגדולים שלנו. אני אנסה לצטט חופשי, אבל הוא כותב, שוב לא יהיה לי רגע כמו הרגע שלפני, הכל היה עוד אפשרי, הכל היה פתוח, עמדתי בגשם וחיכיתי, ובאמת אין על הרגע הזה שלפני, נכון? כשהכל עוד לא קרה, וזה כל כך משמעותי להתחבר דווקא בו. פרופסור אוטו שארמר, זה היה פשוט תענוג, תודה רבה רבה רבה, ותודה רבה לכם, שיהיה לכם יום נהדר, תודה רבה.
תודה.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.